wanted to make this video because I have a few friends that had questions about therapy and we're going through different things, and I wanted to create an informative and also a personal account on my experience with therapy and what I got out of it. I would say that there's many reasons why you would go to therapy in the first place, and one being just that if you have some kind of traumatic situation or something like that occur in your life, whether that's the loss of a loved one or a serious breakup or, you know, losing a job, any kind of big life-changing factor like that, I think that if it affects your day-to-day, that's something that would make you want to consider therapy. Some people go for grief, anxiety, depression, addiction, any kind of severe trauma. And for me personally, I had gone out of a relationship that had lasted several years, and I was also had lived with the person, so it was a big switch in my life. I had a new job, I had a new place to live, and I was used to living with someone for at least 2 years together. So with the breakup and everything, I was really struggling to come to terms with everything. I kind of went into a shock because it was such a traumatic thing just with how my relationship ended, and I really was struggling with simple things like simple day-to-day tasks. I think can be a sign if you need to go. I couldn't sleep on my own. I was having such bad anxiety that I couldn't eat, I couldn't relax. Like, I was in a constant state of kind of panic, really depressed, but it wasn't shown in how it had been in the past. Like, I usually when I would be depressed would be crying all the time, and I was just more so in shock and kind of just had become numb to everything, and I had never experienced that before as an adult. And all of those combined, starting a new life in a way on my own, was pretty much the main reason why I decided to end up going to therapy, as well as I had people in my close family and also friends that really knew me that said oh, have you considered, you know, trying this, it might help. Just because I don't think friends and family can be your only outlet. I think having a therapist when you are going through something traumatic or a big change like that can be a really good thing. I think it's a form of self-care to get proper treatment, and in the past my primary care had referred, if I did want to go see a therapist, she had recommendations and stuff like that. So for me it was a lot of just I knew personally that if I'm not okay being alone, that's not normal and not healthy, and I want to learn new coping strategies and different things I can do to get comfortable with being alone and being on my own and just get over this really bad anxiety that I had. So that was the main reason I decided to seek therapy. I would say you look into what your issues are and then find a therapist that has the training for what you're looking for. There's cognitive behavioral therapy. I personally saw someone for intensive short-term dynamic psychotherapy because for me it was a lot more of a trauma related thing, dealing with anxiety and just that kind of level of stress. So that's just from my perspective, but there's so many different things. It just depends on what your goals are, what kind of issues you're dealing with, and then what type of therapy is best for that. I did see a therapist. I called a lot of people. I recommend if you're trying to find someone, Psychology Today has every local therapists, and they generally have, the nice thing is they have biographies so you can read about them, where they went to school, their training, what they specialize in, all of that kind of stuff is really useful. I also wanted to say if you're initially afraid to do therapy or something of that nature, I wanted to list some books that I have personally read and that really helped me. These were books that I'd heard of, and then also books that my therapist recommended me as I'm a very curious person. I like to be constantly learning, so I asked is there any other supplemental information or things that I can get and read that would help with the coping strategies and with the therapy that I'm already doing. So these are the books that I have accumulated from over this year really, and I've read most of them. A few of them were ones that I still have to read, but I have on my list of what I want to actually go through. Actually, the first book I did get was actually a workbook, and that is this right here. I really like this book in particular, or a workbook in general, because with anxiety, which is something that I really struggle with, mindfulness and being aware and present in a moment is like a very, very big part of getting over anxiety. Anxiety stems from like fear and worry, and if you are able to make yourself present and not focus on like the past or the future or like upcoming things, and just be aware and like centered, it can really, really help curb that kind of anxiousness, like awful feeling that a lot of people experience. And it's a workbook if you like that kind of thing. I found it relatively helpful, but I also am more of a reader, so I started off with that, and then along with that I would recommend, if you are going to therapy, what really helped me was having a notebook and writing down everything I got out of a session so that I have it to look back on and reflect on and learn from in the future. The first two books that I was recommended are The Drama of the Gifted Child, and this is written by Alice Miller. She's a really great author. It's very short. It kind of talks about childhood trauma and how it can create depression in adults and things like that. And the back just says, like, far too many of us had to learn as children to hide our own feelings, needs, and memories skillfully in order to meet our parents' expectations and win their love. Alice Miller writes, when I use the word gifted in the title, I had in mind neither children who receive high grades in school nor children talented in a special way. I simply meant that all of us who have survived an abusive childhood thanks to an ability to adapt even to unspeakable cruelty by being numb. Without this gift offered us by nature, we would not have survived. But merely surviving is not enough. The drama of the gifted child helps us to reclaim our life by discovering our own crucial needs and our own truth. And it's very brief, it's very straightforward. I think that it's really helpful if you are doing therapy and you want some like supplemental information on on childhood or developmental psychology. It's really informative and it's really short. So I recommend this. This was like the first one I read. And with that, I wanted to know more, so I read this book, and this is also ISTDP training. This is written by an MSW, John Fredrickson, and he's actually from the DC DMV area. But this is called The Lies We Tell Ourselves, How to Face the Truth, Accept Yourself, and Create a Better Life. This one's really interesting. I've noticed I gravitate towards books that include like real patients that the psychologist or psychiatrist sees and their accounts of therapy. So this is kind of broken down into different sections. Fredrickson goes through different accounts of different kinds of patients he saw over a course of years, and how he kind of does like a bit of a cognitive behavioral therapy and psychotherapy on them, and kind of uses the conversation to teach you like it gives you an idea of like how therapy works in a way, and I found that really insightful. It also helps you kind of reflect on your own therapy. If you're going through therapy, it's generally, this is done, the way he does it is in a very standardized form and method, and so I see a therapist that has the same kind of training, and just being able to see that and see how she operates based off like in like a word like book format was really interesting. And it also, I feel like it helped me get more out of therapy, seeing how it's conducted and how you can see a patient improve and everything. So if you want more of the ins and outs, I think this is a pretty good book as well. Moving on, this is another thick book. This took me forever to read. This book is like 400 pages. It is quite lengthy. It's called The Boy Who Was Raised as a Dog. A lot of my friends and people I know have read this book that haven't done therapy, just like either were required to read it in a psychology class or in school of some sort. But this is another, it's written by Dr. Bruce Perry. He's a PhD and he's a medical doctor and psychiatrist, practicing psychiatrist. He was one of the huge founders of developmental psychology and just like the research with that, with trauma and children, and it's really insightful. I like how it kind of tells the story of his life. It tells like his story starting as a doctor to then going into becoming a psychiatrist and a therapist, and his accounts with different children and all these different cases around the world. And it's just really lots of short, cool stories, each chapter different child and a different story and different part of his life. But I did like reading this. It's not a page turner, I would say, but it is very informative if you want to learn more about psychology. It's really, really interesting. So I do recommend this. It is a long read, but I do recommend it. And then these are books that I have to still read. This one I was recommended from a YouTuber actually. She is a therapist. I will link her below. But she was reading this book and she recommended it, and it's The Body Keeps the Score. It's kind of about PTSD. I still need to read this. I'm very excited. I've heard really good things. And then the last two, The Coddling of the American Mind, is a really, really good book. Dr. Mike actually spoke with the author and made a video on it, and he has a video about that. I'll link that below as well. But it talks kind of about social media and technology today and how it kind of can affect your mental health, things like that. I found it really, really interesting, and it's a relatively newer book, but that's a really good one. And then what I'm currently reading right now is It's Not Always Depression, Working the Change Triangle to Listen to Your Body, Discover Core Emotions, and Connect with Your Authentic Self. And it's also written by a licensed social worker, and the foreword's written by a PhD. And it's a book based off relationships, you know, attachment theory in psychology sense. I have not started reading it yet. I'm really excited. It's an older book, but it seems to be really, really useful. So those are like what I've read over the course of the year, just to like accompany therapy. I think that there's a few things that I did also learn just doing therapy on a regular basis. I got a lot out of it. So I used to be someone really against it. I thought it was useless, I thought it was stupid and a waste of money, and I honestly think it's because I didn't see the right kind of therapist and I wasn't doing the right kind of therapy. I had tried group therapy, I had seen a psychiatrist that did a different form of therapy, and it wasn't really helping me whatsoever. But I also think for the first time this year I was actually seeking out help and wanting to improve myself. Before, it was more so forced on me. I was still in college and just didn't really believe in it and didn't have the need or want to go. And I think a lot of the time you're not going to necessarily improve unless you genuinely want to. I can only recommend it a lot. I do think that you have to do your research though and see what kind of therapy you're looking for, just because there's lots of different types. And it's more so based off, like, I went because I struggled. I was like constantly with my friends. I didn't want to be alone. I would stay at my friends' houses and spend the night throughout the week when I had work the next day, just because I could not be by myself. It was a huge transition from sleeping next to someone for years to then having that like person, that significant other, no longer in your life. And for me, that was a first time thing, going through that kind of transition, and it hit me really hard. And I think everyone copes with things differently. Some people might get over something like that really easily, but for me it was really hard. There's also a lot of things I would recommend, like meditation really helped me, as well as doing certain physical exercises. Yoga includes kind of part of that. That's why I love yoga so much. But yeah, that's really it. If you have any questions or want me to do more videos like on this topic, just let me know. I'm more than happy to talk about it. It's not something I think you should be ashamed of. I don't like that there's a stigma on going to therapy, especially when you look at how much it actually is shown in studies to help with anxiety in particular, but also depression and other mental health issues. So that's really it. Again, I really hope this helped you, and I just wanted to kind of give my view on it since I've been doing it since March of this year. Really, I can only say good things. It really, really helped me, and I'm in a place where like I've never felt so independent and like assured of myself, and a lot of my issues that I had struggled with throughout high school and throughout college, I've learned to cope with. That kind of knowledge and skills is invaluable, truly. So yeah, thanks for watching, and again, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and subscribe if you want to see more content from me. I'm going to be posting more and more, so yeah, thank you.